Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hello everyone. Welcome to my sixth presentation for the 6th week of Pancasila. And today I will be talking about the concept of justice in Indonesia. My name is Fatima Zahra Panendrogi, and I am from the Faculty of Law with the student ID number B01121201 and 363. Okay, so let us begin. So, before we start, I would like to leave you with a quote from Martin Luther King that says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So, guys, please remember this quote because later on I will relate it to the topic that I'm talking about. So, first things first, the introduction. The general and specific definition of justice itself. Before we begin to understand the implementation of justice in Indonesia, we have to understand what justice itself means. The definition of justice. Essentially, the definition of justice is a state of mind where everybody is equal to each other without any sort of differentiating factor, either by skin, by race, by identity, sexuality, religion, or any other, etc., etc. So a state of justice is a state where everybody is viewed as equal and everybody gets the same treatment that they deserve, and essentially something that every human being must have in their life when it comes to legal matters. So the general definition of justice, the definition of justice that I just gave you guys is something I combined from the general and specific definition. But if we look more closely, justice can be defined from two different perspectives. Number one is the general definition. The general definition of justice is defined as a character or attitude that controls a person to act fairly or unfairly to each other. So justice is essentially a character of a person. Whether or not you act fairly or unfairly to the other people around you is controlled by your sense of justice. So if your sense of justice is high, then it is likely that you will act fairly to the people around you. But if it's low, then it's highly likely that you will not act fairly to the people around you. Now, the more specific definition of justice is limitless equality. Like I said before, justice is something that is viewed as equal in terms of equality. What I mean is that every human being is viewed as equal before every single matter and must be given the same treatment, must receive the same treatment, and must not, one of them, no minorities must be viewed as lesser than the other group, and everybody is treated equally. Now, as we know, justice is most commonly known as equality before the law because justice, or a sense of justice, is something that is highly connected into the law because of certain few things. The justice is said to be connected to the law or the legal system because the term justice is commonly used to define legal system or law itself. It is said that one of the end goals of law, one of the three main end goals of law, is to find justice for every single human being. That being said, I can conclude that justice equals law or legal system. In this context, or in this presentation that I'm about to talk about, we will conclude that justice, what I mean by justice here, is the justice that is presented in the law or legal system. Alright, so a justice-based legal system. According to Sujono Sukanto, there are four main aspects that must be equal to each other in order to fulfill a justice-based legal system. These four aspects are, number one, the laws and regulation. Now, laws and regulation are two things that must always correlate to each other, must always in contact to each other, because if they do not, if there happens to be a miscommunication or a mismatch between laws and regulation, several different chaos might occur in the people's eyes itself. Now, one of these being happens due to a number of mismatched situations between the two. For example, between codified laws such as the Constitution or law number For example, one of 1974 and uncodified law like customary law. For example, the local region's customary law about marriage versus the law number 1 of 1974. If there is any mismatch between these two laws, then it will cause a massive public confusion that will end up with a public distrust towards the legal system. Now, number 2, we have the legal officer's mentality. If the laws and regulation has correlate with each other and has been working perfectly with each other, then the second thing that we must focus on is the mentality of the legal officers or the legal enforcers. The legal enforcer's mentality has to have a strong sense of justice. In order to get justice, you must have a strong sense of justice. If the legal enforcer does not have a strong sense of justice, then it is highly likely that he won't give a fair or equal treatment to those he enforces the law upon, which is why people often says that legal enforcers such as judges has one feet towards hell and one feet towards heaven. Yeah, so being a judge isn't easy, and being a legal enforcer especially is not an easy job if you do not have a high sense of justice. Now, number 3, if the laws and regulation and the legal officer's mentality has been met, now we faces a new problem with the lack of facilities. The lack of facilities to provide cases that needs proper legal handling can also become a hindrance or a problem in the future. If we do not have the facility to properly deal with these problems, then how can we deal with it, even if we do have the human resources and even if we do have the laws and regulations? For example, if we do not have a proper court, then how do we deal with everyday problems such as marriage, civil problems, or for example, criminal problems such as murder or thief and theft and many different things. So yeah, so far as we can see, what's very important is the regulation laws correlates the legal officer's mentality and the lack of facilities. Now, if these three conditions have been made, then what we must focus on is the people's awareness and trust. This is actually the most important thing out of all the 4 aspects, because even though these other 3 aspects has been made and a proper law and regulation or a proper justice has been made, if the public itself does not believe in this justice or is not aware that they must have this sense of justice, then there will be a massive public distrust towards the law enforcers, resulting in a revolution or, for example, a massive uh, protest, such as we've seen, such as in what I've covered in the previous materials about the public distrust towards Suharto's rule in Indonesia. So yeah, what Sujono Sukanto is trying to say is that maintaining these 4 aspects and properly making sure that these 4 aspects are working with each other with none of them being missing is very important, and the public's awareness and trust towards these 4 aspects must be kept considered in order to avoid any unnecessary revolution or unnecessary chaos in the public. So, implementation of justice in Indonesia. Now that we've covered about the definition of justice and we have seen about the justice-based legal system or the ideal justice-based of legal system, we now move on to the implementation of justice in Indonesia itself. Usually, an injustice in the legal system can be traced back to the system itself. However, it is different for Indonesia or any other country that is still in development period, because according to Muhammad Shafi'i, the main problem between all of these developing countries is not in the system itself. So an injustice that is not traced back to the system. However, it is traced back to the law enforcers themselves. This is what we can relate back into the Sujarno Sukanto's theory, which is number 2, legal enforcers mentality. So, usually, according to Muhammad Shafi'i, developing countries does have a proper law and regulation, and it does have the facilities. However, the legal enforcers mentality is still very weak towards justice. This leads into cases such as bribery, corruption into the legal world. And because of this bribery and corruption, it leads back into the most important thing out of these 4 aspects being ruined. Over there, we have the people's awareness and trust. Because the people feel like they cannot trust the legal enforcers, they lost the trust, and it creates a public distrust towards the law enforcers itself. So, the conclusion being is that currently in Indonesia state, we can see that there's a massive public distrust towards the politics system and as well as the law enforcers. However, this can be fixed if the public or if the law enforcers show that they have the mentality of justice, they have the sense of justice needed to enforce the law. A certain openness towards how they enforce these laws must be shown for the people to understand and for the people to gain back their trust towards the law enforcement. So yes, the conclusion between all of this and the main question that I have been posed is that does the Indonesian people or the Indonesian public has felt the sense of justice from their law enforcement? And the answer is no. Currently, a public distrust, like a minority public distrust, is pretty much seen all over Indonesia, and most people do not trust the law enforcement and especially the people's representation as well as the government themselves. However, like I said, this can easily be changed if the government or the law enforcers themselves showed a certain openness towards the people and show what exactly they do and how they do it and why they do it, so the people could understand whether or not this is actually for their well-being or for their prosperity themselves. So yes, that would be all for my presentation today. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you guys have any question, please refer to the professors, or you can just find my number immediately from the professors. So thank you very much for watching. Once again, my name is Fatima Azhara Pananrungi and I am from the Faculty of Law. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.